Well, I'm excited to jump into today's episode. And for you guys that are listening, we talked about DealFlow on episode 2. I think it was episode 2. I think that's right. Yeah. We kind of gave more of like a story background overview of like the process that you're kind of making money with real estate investing on episode 1. Episode 2 is DealFlow. Episode 3 was more of like funding deals. Yeah. But in episode 2, when we covered DealFlow, we kind of left a lot of granular details out of how you keep deal flow coming. You know, it's like, okay, well, what are all the ways, you know, cause like, I don't mean, you mentioned a bunch of stuff, probate attorneys, like, which that would be managing estates. Is that right? Is that estate management that those types of attorneys?
Yeah. So somebody dies, property goes into probate. The probate attorney knows that this family inherited a house and they want to sell it. And so you connect with them and then they would reach out to you and tell you. A lot of times, sometimes probate attorneys are weird because just depending on what's happening in probate, you have to get appraisals of it, and then your offer has to be at 75% of the value of the appraisal. And so, and that's foreclosure as well. So there's so many different ways to do it.
Yeah. I know that's one of them. There's like a bunch of things we can cover. Yeah. This is funny. My buddy actually interviewed this attorney firm the other day with like one of his financial podcast YouTube situations, and his title for the thumbnail and for like the video was my interview with a master probator. His first question was, how many times a week do you probate?
It's terrible.
He's like, I actually wouldn't say that that's a way that I do things. Yeah. But that's funny.
That is.
Okay. Well, I guess we can get into it. Like, when I'm thinking about like deals coming in, I'm thinking through, okay, there are probably ways to create deal flow that require certain skills. You have great networking skills. You're great with people, building relationships and all that stuff. I'd say we'd have a bunch of people that we've helped in our programs, and a lot of clients that maybe are like, oh, I don't identify as like an extrovert that can do relationship well. There are ways that are probably more of a priority for those people to build deal flow at first, and maybe then undertake new networking skills, learn how to do relationship. Like, don't just just because you are functioning a certain way. But I guess like for you being a relational person, what would be like the way? So it's like, say you have some deals coming in. You've done some of those initial things that we talked about on the other episode. Where do you keep things going? Like, where do the systems start falling in place?
Yeah, I think on the first or the second episode, we more so talked a lot about finding deals, but it was, if you got dropped into a market, how would you make, $100,000 in 6 months or something along those lines? Sure. And so like, let's just dive deep into setting up a lead funnel. And so there's two ways to set up a lead funnel. One is from, in my business, we call them connector leads or networking leads. And so that is not paid marketing. That is just finding leads through relationships. The other way to set up a lead funnel is by setting up some sort of paid marketing direct to seller funnel, whether that's direct mail, cold calling, SEO, Google AdWords, pay-per-click, which is same thing.
Was that difficult to learn, like that stuff?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. But we outsource a lot of that. So like SEO, pay-per lead is something that's completely outsourced. You just pay a company to send you leads. Sure. We outsource direct mail. I mean, we're like pulling lists and making sure the lists are good, but a lot of that is outsourced. So, but I mean, so it's not hard to learn. I think when it comes to paid marketing, where people excel is when they can track the data. Because the data will tell a story of, hey, this postcard for some reason had more people call off of it. Okay, why? And so looking at the postcard, well, it's a bright color. Well, so people call off of bright colors. I've seen people that will take their postcards and crumple them up and then put them and then send them out, because it's something that it's not flat. It's, you're going through the mail, throw away. What is this all crumpled up? And they look at it and they read it. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to call this person. And so we don't do that, but I've just heard of people doing that. There's handwritten mail. You can pay companies that use, machines to write the handwritten mail for you. So it's a
pattern disruption.
Yeah.
It's this is like, stereotypical marketing practices.
So you just got to track it. And so I think that's where it does get hard. I think a lot of companies throw away money because they don't track it. They just throw money at paid marketing to all these different companies and outsource everything, and they don't really track what are we getting the highest ROI on.
Or they'll send out like 300 mailers and be like, why didn't I get any deals? And it's like, you need to send at least like 2,000 to 5,000.
Yeah, I think we send over 10,000 a month, and we don't get a ton of deals off of direct mail. I mean, buying a couple houses a month from direct mail.
Totally.
So granted, if they come to our website, we'll retarget them, and so but I don't for anybody that's listening to this, because I think most people probably aren't in the position to be dropping 10, 15, 20 grand a month on marketing.
Right.
I don't even like teaching about paid marketing. I like teaching about connector marketing.
Well, it's down the line.
It is down the line for sure.
I feel like, and I kind of explained this to a bunch of entrepreneurs that I had kind of mentored, coached over the years, like had conversations with. When they're getting into it, they're like, okay, when do I jump into paid ads, and when do I'm like, you're not ready for that. It's kind of like there are skills that you need as a prerequisite to even make the most out of paid stuff. Like you need to have a sales process, right? You're like, if I'm going to start getting my phone's going to start ringing, I need to know how to talk to people. Okay. Well, you learn to do that in smaller quantities with relational dynamics that you've built some warmth with. Now you have cold traffic people calling you. How do you convert those people into like deals? But I'd say the other thing is, and this is the biggest thing, you have to go, what do I have the most resource of that is the cheapest to me? For most people, money is not their cheapest resource. If that makes sense. It's like they have more time than they have money. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't even have any time. It's like, yeah, but you really don't have any money.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the resource you should be spending right now is your time. Until your time becomes more valuable than money, then you should spend money, which is where paid ads and pay-per-click and those types of things come into play, because you're like, well, I have enough money. It's not that valuable to me. I want to get more time back.
Yep.
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, 100%. And so like anybody that's just starting out, I would say spend the first year just networking with people. Because also you're going to learn how to run numbers on houses. Because if you're spending money on direct mail or any sort of paid form of marketing, you want to be able to monetize every lead that comes through your door. And so if you don't really know what you're doing yet, you might be able to monetize, hey, this 3-2 cosmetic flip, because that's pretty easy. But if you get a really great deal that is a fire damaged house that's $500,000, but if you put 200 into it, it's worth $1.1 million. You might pass on that at the beginning, and you're kind of throwing away money. Yeah. Even though for me, I would never flip that deal, but because of multiple years of networking, I know people that would want that deal, and so that would be a wholesale for me. And build up, relationships with private money lenders to be able to take down X amount of deals. If you have 5 deals come through your door at once, and you don't have the system set up to wholesale, and you don't have the private money to take those down, then you're going to only be able to take down 2 or 3 of them. And then you're kind of throwing away money. You're not monetizing leads. If you don't have a great relationship with a real estate agent, and you can't, pass a deal off that you get that is retail ready, and the person wants to sell in the retail market to that real estate agent, you don't have that relationship built up yet. You can't monetize that. So we're able to monetize every lead that comes in. Not every lead, but we're able to at least potentially monetize every lead that comes in.
I guess when you're talking, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it sounds like, okay, so we got 100 leads that came in. If I don't know what I'm doing, I might be able to turn one of those out of 100 leads into a potential deal within my narrow buy box of what I know I can do. But now if you have network relationships, you have been in the space long enough, you've done BRRRR, you've done short-term rental, you've done long-term rental, you've done flips, you've done wholesale, you've done wholesale. Well, now you're like, out of those 100, I might get 30 deals that I can actually do. I'm not saying those are like the accurate stats, but I'd have a lot more leads I can monetize based on all of the ways I know how to monetize and what my network allows me to monetize, based on the person that's like, I might make very little on that list of 100 leads where you're going to make a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that I would say that, if I was talking to somebody that was just starting or even, a year in, the only thing that I would say to that is I don't think you should do flip, burr, short-term, mid-term, wholesale. Like, I think you should focus in on a couple of those. But you'll have relationships. Like, so for instance, in St. Louis, there's a couple really great areas to do short-term rentals, and I don't do short-term rentals. I don't do mid-term rentals.
Yeah.
But if I come across a house that works as a short-term rental from paid marketing, I have people now in my ecosystem that I can connect with that seller, and then I can just get a finder's fee or I can wholesale it for a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 spread.
Yeah.
So,
but out of those different options, I know we talked about like flip and wholesale really is the thing to do right now for people that don't have capital. Like, I mean, I wrote up some ads for you and Brandon the other day to say, and you guys are both like, I don't feel comfortable saying buy and hold is dead.
Yeah.
Specifically Brandon because of his fund.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't say buy and hold is dead, which is copy that I wrote for our ads, because he's got a fund where they literally hold and then they pay their investors. And I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for, I guess the audience of average Joes or like the average investor that's wanting to make as much money as possible, buy and hold really isn't one of those strategies that you'd recommend right now? Or like,
no,
because if you're saying like pick one or two of those things, like there can't just be like, well, I like this, so I'm going to pick it. It's like what's working in the market.
Well, yeah. And it all goes back to what do you want to do? If you want to go full-time real estate, you're not going to go full-time real estate off buy and holds for a long time. Right now it's hard with interest rates where they're at. It's hard to make anything cash flow. And
how many homes do you need to replace your income?
Yeah. I mean, right now it'd be infinite because they're not cash flowing.
Right.
So, but if you're kind of doing the stereotypical, hey, we want to cash flow $200 to $250 a door, I mean, you still need 50 homes to replace your income, And so, depending on what you make, and that can take a long time to get there. And so, you just have to look at like, what do you want to do? And then maybe if you're doing short-term rentals, which I think short-term rentals are risky, I think mid-term rentals are risky, but you can cash flow a little bit more per door, but you need more money to put down typically on those. Same with right now, if you're trying to cash flow long-term rentals, you need to put down a bunch of money. So you have to have a great W-2 job, a lot of money in savings to be able to cash flow anything right now.
Well, it's like Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey has 900 million. I think it's 900 million in owned real estate.
Really? I did not know that. Wow. Good for him.
It's none of it is leveraged.
Really?
It's either 900 or 300 million. Either way, it's a huge number.
Either
I'm like
way,
in my head. So
wild.
let's go lower number in case my numbers are off. I know it's at least 300 million.
Yeah.
That's because he's made so much money from his business that he's put it into something that are now put it into assets that pay him, but he has not needed to fund. So he does not care about interest rates. So the cash flow from that 300 million is probably paying him 70 or 80 million a year, whatever it was, and he has no debt leveraged. It makes sense for a person like that.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about people that have massive capital that are like, man, I love buy and hold. I want to do that. It's like, well, you're also dependent on what banks are willing to give you right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for the typical person, I do think that flipping and wholesaling is the way to start. It's especially if you want to get into full-time real estate. It's flipping and it's wholesaling.
Sure.
I think that over time you can strategically pick off rentals and maybe put a little bit of money down into them. I think interest rates are going to come back down at some point. Hopefully, I think rents are going to go up because right now it is cheaper to rent than to buy. And I think that will swap at some point. And so rents are going to go up, and then it's going to make more sense to acquire long-term rentals because you can perform, the BRRRR strategy on them and you can recapture all of the money that you have invested into it.
You'll have a lot of relationships at that point though, when you decide to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Where like, you'll have way more deals than the person. It's like, okay, I finally waited. Now I can start doing buy and hold. It's like, you're competing against me and I have all these relationships.
Yeah. So I think flips and wholesales are the way to go. And so then what I would say with that, if you're like, hey, okay, I want to flip and I want to wholesale, how do I find deals? Let's just go through the 5 or 6 different and
give me like top 80% first.
Yeah.
And then maybe those like bottom 20%.
Yeah. So the very first thing that I would do is, and we talked about this in episode 2, is I would start attending local meetups. Every single metro area, major metro area with, over probably 50,000 people is going to have real estate meetups.
Yeah.
And so the way that you find them is you just get plugged into, local real estate investing Facebook pages, meetup.com. Bigger Pockets has pages where they talk about local meetups. You can just Google local meetups, my area, but there's going to be a local meetup for most of the people listening to this, somewhat close to them. And, if you're in a major city, like St. Louis isn't even that major of a city. It's probably one of the top 30 or 40 biggest cities in the United States, but you could go to a local meetup 3 or 4 times a week, somewhere in St. Louis. And so just start going to as many of those. And so what you guys should do is just literally, especially if you're in a big city, is make a list, an Excel spreadsheet or Google sheet of every single local meetup that is happening in your area, the date, the time, and start attending those. And the first month you might go to, if you really want to build up deal flow, you might go to 15 different meetups. And through those 15, you're going to go to a couple of them and be like, this sucked. This had, there's
not going back to that
weird people there. I'm never going back. Yeah. But you're going to go to a couple where you're like, I met a lot of rock stars there, learned a lot of great stuff, really great networking opportunity. And so that is where I would start, is local meetups, because you're going to meet wholesalers, you're going to meet real estate agents, you're going to meet other investors. From those local meetups, what I tell everybody is go to those local meetups and you are a politician at those local meetups. And what I mean by that is you're the first person to show up. You're the last person to leave. You're shaking hands. You're talking to as many people as you can. You're not going and just sitting down and not talking to anybody. You have to be willing to make relationships. And I know that does come easier for some people, but you have to be willing to make relationships. From there, I'm getting as many names, as many phone numbers, as many business cards as I can get at those local meetups. And I'm coming home and I'm putting those into an Excel spreadsheet. And so I met John Smith. He's a real estate agent. Here's his phone number. Here's his email address. I met, George Johnson. He's a wholesaler. Here's his email. Here's his phone number. I'm taking all of those. Yeah. And I'm the next day I'm calling them and I'm like, hey, it was so great to talk with you last night. Would love to just talk with you a little bit more about your business, tell you a little bit about mine. Would you want to grab coffee? And
they're all there for the same reason too. Like, I'm looking for value. Yeah. I'm looking for stuff like this. And they find a person that's actually intentional. Like, yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I love grabbing coffee with people. So, and so you're setting up these one-on-one meetings. You're going and you're sitting with them. And I think we talked in another episode about crafting your buy box, but you go to these one-on-one meetings and you basically tell that person exactly what you're looking for. Hey, if you have anything that matches this buy box, I would love to see it either on market or off market, typically off market. But one of those things with those one-on-one meetings is it's not as much about the deal or getting deals sent to you there. It's more about just building a relationship. I'm such a firm believer in building like genuine, authentic relationships, because if you are known, liked, and trusted, you will get deals sent to you. Yeah. And so my goal is because there's so many connectors or network connectors, let's say, in the St. Louis area, that are seeing deals, whether you're a real estate agent, whether you're a wholesaler, whether you're a probate attorney, property management company, junk removal company, mold remediation company, you're walking houses constantly that are potential deals for me. My goal is to be the first person that they think of when they see something like that, and they pick up their phone and they call me. Yeah. And so, and the way that I get there is by building valuable relationships. Yep. And so it's good. That's what those one-on-one meetings are for, is just building valuable relationships.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So, okay, that's tier one. And I know we did cover that, like in that first episode about deal flow. Do you feel like, cool, there's enough in that? We could probably talk for, hours and hours and hours. what would be the next strategy? You're like next of the next highest importance.
Well, I think it's the next strategy. So like, I would say that this strategy works for everything. Those one-on-ones, like property management companies. So quick story about a really cool deal that I bought was I was just trying to find more deals. So I made a list of every property management company in St. Louis. And I picked up my phone and I called every single property management company. I just said, hey, my name's Cameron. I'm a local investor. I'm looking for portfolios to buy. If you have any of your clients that are wanting to sell their portfolio, please call me. I'd love to chat about it. And so I got great feedback on that. Had some people send me some deals. But as I was calling this list, I talked to this lady, and I'm blanking on her name. Joanne, I think was her name. Really sweet old lady. And we were talking, and she was telling me about how she plays in a senior women's softball league. And then on Tuesday nights, and then afterwards they all go to Applebee's. And she was talking about, like, I think she got like the 2 for $20 or something like that. Yeah. Just Midwest, good old Midwest. So I remember that. And then on Tuesday that week, I got her an Applebee's gift card, and I went by her office and I dropped it off to her. And I just said, hey, it was so great talking to you on the phone. Here's an Applebee's gift card. Dinner's on me tonight. And the next day she called me, and one of her clients, who actually was a guy from India, was selling a portfolio of 30 something homes in St. Louis. And she said, do you want it? And so I ended up buying that portfolio of 30 homes, and I wholesaled it for about, it was like in the 60s, a $60,000 wholesale. So it was only like $2,000 a house, but it was a really easy deal where I put it under contract. I already knew the end buyer. And so the end buyer told me what he wanted it for. So I just told her what I wanted it for, gave myself a $60,000 spread. And then connected the end buyer with the guy from India. He set up all the walkthroughs and anything. I didn't have to do anything other than just be the middleman and be really great at building relationships.
Jeez.
So like property management companies.
So how long did it take to, like, on that deal to make $60K?
It was less than 3 weeks. Because he was ready to sell. He was ready to sell, and they weren't great properties. I think every property was probably around, like, legitimately, I think we bought them for like $40,000 to $50,000 a door.
Sure.
So they weren't great properties. The only thing that we had to do is the end buyer wanted to walk every single one. Yeah. So, but we lined those up within the week, and he was able to walk every single one.
Jeez.
And then he just needed to look at, like, the P&Ls and whatnot. And so it was a really, really quick close. He inherited all of the tenants.
Nice. So it was like, so he was buying something for a cash flow asset.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Got it. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. Rad.
So that was a really quick one, but that's another just way. And the same strategy works with.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. I've just one more question before we move on from this. How did you meet that guy that bought the portfolio? Where did you meet him?
Local meetup. Dude. Actually, he was probably like one of the third or fourth people that I ever took out for, like, coffee.
Dude.
So I went to a local meetup and met him. The next day I called him and said, hey, do you want to go grab coffee? And we still talk. Actually, we were just texting earlier today. So that was 4 years ago. And we still talk all the time.
I feel like intention with meetups is so important, because, like, I've had, like you were saying, that somebody took you out and you ended up paying for, like, lunch and coffee and stuff. And it's like, no, if I'm taking you out and my intention is to find value, like future value, also provide it. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to provide value if, like, I'm the one initiating. Yeah. But I feel like there's got to be an intentionality, because I've sat down with people and they're, like, a little dissociated, or they're not, like, present with me, or there's just, like, I'm like, this is not a memorable relationship or something that I enjoy at all whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there has to be, like, a level of respect and honor you bring to every relationship, because, like, who would have known that guy would have turned into a deal like that? Mm-hmm. And most people are just like, okay, I'm looking for this one deal, and, like, they're almost like value sucking.
Yeah.
And not just going, like, no, every person contains inherent value, and as a person, as a human being, and I'm going to treat them as such, knowing that the more I just give generously with my time, my energy, my thoughtfulness, gifts, it's going to come back to me. Yeah. That's not the purpose, but it's like, it's really because people are valuable.
Yeah. And I think in real estate, this is important, especially for one-on-ones, to know is that every investor does have some sort of a savior complex.
Yeah.
And so, and I say that to say, like, when you're sitting down with a person one-on-one, like I genuinely wanted to learn from them, and I treated them like that, where it's like, hey, you're crushing it. Like, I want to learn from you, and I want to hear about your business. And I let them talk about, people love talking about themselves.
Yes.
And so I let them talk about themselves.
They pay lots of money to therapy for that.
Yes, exactly. I let them talk about themselves, and I'm just asking questions, and people get value from that.
Yeah.
They literally get value from talking about themselves. And so
sick. Love that.
So I was great about that. And a couple other things that I would say with one-on-ones is, like, I did, before these one-on-ones, I had listened to probably 50 to 100 podcasts on real estate investing. I'd probably read 10 books. So that is something that does sometimes annoy me. I love grabbing coffee. But when I sit down with somebody for coffee and I realize I was their very first, like, stop for learning. Oh,
you're carrying way too much burden.
Yeah.
At that point.
I'm like, you know, do your due diligence beforehand. I feel like I did do that, where it was like I had learned as much as I could from podcasts and from books.
I put it this way. I like hanging out with hungry people. I don't like hanging out with desperate people.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to, and that's what I was. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, where I knew a lot of stuff. I just needed a couple more things, like a couple more insights. But I could sit there and still hold a conversation of what is a BRRRR? What's the ARV? Like, I've sat down with people and, like, so what's the BRRRR method? Or what's the ARV of like, how do you, what does ARV mean? And I get it. Like, sure, everybody's learning, but I'm like, you could have Googled that, you know? And so,
like, take notes, write down stuff, like look this up after conversation with.
Yeah, you could have Googled that. And so before we even met, like, you know, so.
Yeah. Well, I know I derailed you a while back because I was asking about, like, okay, you met this guy here and that's awesome. So, but you were kind of moving on. So we have obviously you're finding deals through property management companies. Mm-hmm. And then I guess, would you say you're done kind of explaining that part? Like, was there?
Yeah, I mean, because it's all the same. That's the great thing about, like, this is it's all the same strategy. It's just different like, places. Exactly. So you've got, you know, property management companies. You have senior living facilities. People are getting older. People
you talk to the managers there, or
like talk to the manager there. The one thing that I would say with the senior living facility is that's the one that I handle with the most care, where I'm not going into a senior living facility saying, hey, I want to buy everybody's that's coming in here's house. I'm saying, hey, I want to be an option and a resource. And anybody that needs any help making decisions, I'm happy to sit down with them and talk them through the home selling process.
So no, like, flyers that say, are you ready to keel over and die?
Yes,
where are your assets going?
Yeah, no, none of that. No, no cash offer.
So
quick,
bad.
No cash offer quick. I don't want to come across as an ambulance chaser.
Yeah. So fear mongering. You're like, are your kids left with the best situation after you pass?
Yes.
So terrible.
No, with senior living, I am going in there as more of like an educational resource where I can sit down with you and I can talk you through the listing process. I can talk you through the honestly, the rehabbing listing, because most people moving into a senior living facility, they're old. They've let their house kind of, you know, not go into shambles, but it's just not updated or anything. So, like, hey, you could do paint, floors, kitchens, bathrooms, sell for here. You could list as is on the market here, or you could sell to me here. Here are all your options. I'm just here to help point you in the right direction. I'm going to help you in any way that I can. A lot of times people realize, well, I don't want people in and out of my house. I don't want to go through the rehab process. You know, I would rather just sell to you. And so senior living facilities is a great way to do it.
How do you have that conversation, like, tactically, when you walk? So say you walk into the lobby of a senior living facility, manager happens to be up front.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I'm Cameron, or maybe you called them. Like, what does that first conversation look like?
Yeah. So with a manager of a senior living facility, I'm going to just sit there with them or walk in and I'm going to say, hey, my name's Cameron. I'm a local investor. Would love to just to talk about, you know, any clients that you have that are coming in that are potentially wanting to sell their house. And there's times where they'll say, yeah, we're not interested. Most people are nice and will give you the time of day. And that's when you can kind of really explain the process of, like, hey, I'm not here to try and, you know, take advantage of any of your clients that are moving in here. I genuinely do want to be a resource to them. And so, and I explain like, hey, on my team, we have real estate agents. On my team, we have construction crews. On my team, we're able to just buy it and take all of the headache off of them, but we can give them every single option. And I'll pull up, you know, pictures of our team, give them our website. So they'll see that we're legit. We're not just somebody that's trying to take advantage of somebody. And so there's a really,
there's a delicacy to it.
There's a delicacy to it. And I was able to learn this from a guy in St. Louis. You know, he actually, we worked on the same team for a little bit. His name's Phil Vincent. He opened up a company, I think it's called Your Mom's House. It's legitimately about buying from senior living facilities.
That's cool.
Yeah. So senior living facilities is another option. Junk removal companies. That's a great option. Yeah. Cause think about it. Junk removal companies are only going to houses that are distressed. Yeah. They got flooded. It's been trashed. They're doing some sort of clean out for one reason or another. A lot of times it's drugs or, you know, and so when they go to those houses as a tenant turn, somebody had a rental property that the tenant's destroyed. So they get called. And so just connecting with them and saying, hey, anytime you walk a house like this and you're talking to the owner, like just throw out, have you ever thought about just selling it? And so you're not going to buy 30 homes a year from that, but you might buy 5. You know, you might buy 5 homes a year from doing that. Same thing with mold remediation companies. I mean, they're only going to houses that need mold remediation. That's typically means that there's some sort of distress to that property. And so again, when you're talking with the owner, have you ever thought about selling your house? And obviously, like, they're smart enough to know when they ask that question, when they don't. If it's a $1 million house that's brand new that just had a leak and got moldy, they're probably not going to ask that. But if they go and walk a house that has 4 feet of water, had 4 feet of water in the basement and needs a full rehab. Do you want to
keep this?
Exactly. Then it's like, hey, seems like a lot of work. Have you just thought about selling it? Because I've got a buddy who would buy it as is. And the person's like, yeah, I'd love to talk with them, you know? So, junk removal companies, mold remediation companies. There is, you know, probate attorneys. I think the thing to think through is like who is going to be like the very first people that potentially hears or sees deals, and how do I build relationships with them so they call me? And I've never done this, but I have a really great friend who's kind of a mentor in the industry. And one of the things that he did was he connected with all of the bowling alley owners. Because he's like, the bowling alley owners.
There's not 20 somethings hanging out at the bowling alley.
That's exactly right. He's like, it's a community center for a lot of people. Like these older bowling alleys, not the ones that are like, you know, blacklit, the party ones, like the old grungy, still smoke. Everybody has bowling leagues, and it's a community center. And so he connected with the bowling alley owners and said, anytime you hear of somebody passing away or wanting to sell their house, let me know. And he would legitimately buy 20 to 25 houses a year just from bowling alley owners.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I never did that, but that's just you can be creative with this.
What's that movie? About the dude. You know what I'm talking about?
Big Lebowski.
The Big Lebowski. Yeah, they hung out at the bowling alley nonstop.
And that's the type of bowling alleys that you're looking for.
Yeah,
where it's
exactly.
Like, there's a bunch of
Vietnam vets.
Yep. There's old people in there drinking and smoking, and the bowling alley owner hears all of the gossip. Like, I mean, another strategy is I'm just thinking through, and I haven't heard of anybody doing this, but just all of the local bars, like the local, like mom and pop bars. Yeah. The dive bars. Exactly. Yeah. Like the dive bar owner is going to know all of the gossip in the neighborhood, who's selling their houses, who's getting divorced, any sort of distress situations. And again, just presenting yourself as a resource. I think that's important, is you're not going in there like, you know, I'm trying to look to take advantage of people or this. You're presenting yourself as a resource of like, hey, if you hear of anybody that needs to sell their house and needs to sell it quick, or it's in a distressed situation, I'd love to talk with them. It doesn't mean I'm going to buy it, but I also can just help point them in the best direction to sell it.
It's almost like we actually we have a client that buys dive bars. He's like, hey, I'm looking for homes, but I'm also looking for dive bars.
Exactly. So there's just so many different ways to start just stacking deals. I mean, we just went through, and I know we're running out of time, but we just went through
close. It was a shorter one today.
8 or 9 of them. And you can get creative. There's there's so many ways to be creative about this, and like who's going to have the inside scoop on who's selling their house, and how am I going to be the first person to hear about it?
Yeah. And I think that's like, you know, if I think about the friendships where you are the best man, or you're in the bridal party, it's like, why? You've built a level of relational equity that tells that person that you're in their close circle. Now, what does that person have? Intentionality. Real love, authenticity, you know, is a real genuine person. You enjoy them. There's a level of like, integrity you carry too. It's like, those are all things where it's like, you don't need to be in somebody's bridal party for them to give you the first call in business. Yeah. But there is like some of those same character traits I think are important. It's like, am I likable? Am I like, and this sounds probably so corny to some people, but like, you probably need to work on yourself. There are a lot of people where it's like, you don't know how you come across, and it's not because you need to change the way you talk. It's because you legitimately have made so many compromises in your life. You've become a bad person. Yeah. And you need to actually face yourself, get some therapy, like work through some stuff. And you're like, why can't I figure this out? It's because you're an aggressive, egotistical prick. Yeah. Yeah. It's not working out for you.
Yeah. I think that is important. You do have to be likable. And I think, and we might've talked about this already on one of the other episodes, but I do think that if you don't have that charismatic personality, that's still okay. Yeah. You don't have to have a charismatic personality to do this, but you do have to, like, I can offer value just in my charismatic personality. Yeah. Because people enjoy to be around me. Yeah. Other people, maybe they can't offer the value through like the charismatic personality. You know, everybody has the friends that's like, he doesn't bring a ton of value. He's just a lot of fun to hang out with. That's kind of me, you know, totally. But there's other people that are like, hey, he's quiet, but when he says something, it's so wise and it's so smart, or he is able to think differently than, and so you don't have to be a incredibly charismatic person.
You have to know your giftings and skill sets and own them. You know, like some of the best salespeople I've ever seen are not extroverts. They're not like the guy that makes friends with everybody. Yeah. Some of them are introverts. Yeah. And it's like, man, how did they crush it in sales, a relational job? Well, they are very good with logic. They're very authentic still. Yeah. Honest. You know, it's like those qualities, people still go, well, if I'm talking to an introvert friend, if he just owns like, dude, I'm an introvert, like I just don't talk much. Yeah. Just him saying that, and I'm like, oh, I just built trust with you because I got to hear more about you. You're sharing that with me. And it's like, if you are fully you and you own it, then it doesn't matter to go to these places, because I don't think awkwardness is a character type. Yeah. I don't think poor communication is a personality type. I think those are skills you learn. Yeah. You can learn the skills and character traits and be successful, and you still don't have to be naturally extroverted. Yeah. I told a story, I think 2 weeks ago on this podcast, of one of the best buyers in St. Louis now. He does acquisitions. And it took a while for him to get there. But I'll never forget him, because we sat down and we had a meeting as he was first starting, and he was coming over from a different industry. And I told him that I was looking for acquisition managers in my own company. And it was just a struggle to find them. And he is an introvert. But you know, 30 minutes after that meeting, he called me with a list of potential candidates, you know, and immediately built trust. Yeah. He's not a super charismatic person, but he is somebody like that right there. He was using his skill set. Problem solver.
And solving a problem. And immediately I'm like, yeah, that guy's in my corner. I'm going to, you know, send him deals. I'm going to work with him, hang out with him, give him any of my like industry experience that I can, just because of that. And so you don't have to be a great people person. You have to find whatever your skill set is and really press into that. So. Yeah, that's awesome. Dude, this is all such good stuff today. Yeah. If you're listening to this, you didn't get any value today, this is not for you. I'm just kidding. This is like, hey, stop messing with my equipment over there, pal. Yeah. No, this is super fun. I feel like I'm learning so much, because like I haven't been in the real estate space at all. You know, in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of crossover though. Oh, you know, it's just, there's so much. It's marketing and sales, just different. Yeah. And then there's like fulfillment, which is you actually doing the process of rehabbing those deals, you know, actually working the deal, the contracts, all that different stuff. And maybe that's something we can talk about at some point. Yeah, is like, gosh, like all the practicals that go into, like, how'd you learn that as just some guy had never been in the real estate space? But I think this is super fun. And
I guess based on the things we've talked about at this point, what of those things we've discussed, so funding deals, deal flow, we haven't really touched on deal analysis yet, but maybe a little bit, I think, in one of the episodes. What would you say you can expand on the most if you were given like 10 or 20 hours to talk on a subject?
Probably deal flow. Yeah, probably deal flow.
Is it all those nuances of like, okay, here's what you say, here's what you do here, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would say deal flow, but then it all does work like cohesively of analyzing deals, of negotiating deals. That'll
be a fun one to chat about, actually.
How to negotiate deals. And so, I mean, I could talk about them all for a long time. I love it. And it's what I do every day.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what we're going to be talking about next. Yeah. It'll be fun. I'm learning a lot. This is super fun. If you guys are getting anything out of this podcast, if you're watching it on YouTube or you're listening on Apple or Spotify, it'd be super helpful if you just took literally 20 seconds out of your day to rate and review the podcast. And, you know, we're putting this content out, not just like to hopefully find people that we can help further as clients, but also so that you can really get value and you can learn a lot, hopefully. Like, we want to be a company. I know Cameron really has a heart to like really share a lot of his knowledge so that people can be changed by it, you know? So, take time to do that. And if you do want to know more about DealFlow and our programs and resources for clients, and you'd like to explore potentially the possibility of becoming a client, seeing if we could help you, I'll put a link in the description of the podcast and the YouTube so that you guys can click on that and learn more about us. And
love it.
No worries if not.
Dude,
we'll see you in the next one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Talk to you guys later.